Lake Champlain lies in the northeast of the North American continent. It's a uniquely shaped lake that is about 107 miles long, but only 14 miles wide, with a maximum depth of 400 feet, but on average it's only 26 feet, meaning this is a very shallow lake. The native tribes from this area basically called this the lake with a bulge. Because of its reach, the lake's northernmost point extends into Quebec, Canada. However, the lake is more commonly known as a landmark for the states of New York and Vermont. There are, of course, many islands and a great reef that are in the lake, as well as natural vegetation and wildlife that are in and around the lake. But the thing that brings us here is the monster. For centuries, people have claimed to have sighting and even have physically touched the American lake monster, Champ. Champ, or Champy, gets his namesake from the credited first French explorer Samuel de Champlain, who witnessed the monster in July of 1609. But here, we run into our first discrepancy, due to the fact that the legend points out Sam was at the lake when he saw the monster. But in his journal, it's recorded that he was by St. Lawrence River. Here's what he wrote. By the way, I'm probably gonna botch some names in here. I'm sorry, but not sorry. There is also a great abundance of fish, of many varieties, among others one called chawasaru, which varies in length, the largest being, as people told me, 8 or 10 feet long. I saw some 5 feet long, which were as large as my thigh, the head being as big as my 2 fists, with a snout 2.5 feet long, and a double row of very sharp and dangerous teeth. Its body is, in the shape, much like that of a pike, but it's armed with scales so strong that a poignard could not pierce them. Its color is silver gray. The extremity of its snout is like that of a swine. Here, with his description of the beast, we can move in 2 different directions. First, he mentions others, and I'm too damn excited to say it, but he was talking to Native American tribes that lived around the lake. The Abenaki, the Iroquois, and the Mohawk, who all talk about a 200-foot horned serpent that lives in the waters. From Sam's description, what he's seen is way smaller. The next important sighting was recorded on July 24th of 1819, when the Plattsburgh newspaper reported a Captain Crum caught sight of the thing at a ridiculous distance of 200 yards away, in great detail, where he describes that it had 3 long teeth and eyes that looked like peeled onions, and it was only 15 feet long. Later in the 1800s, railroad workers who were constructing near the lake witnessed Champ rise his head out of the water, again describing it as a serpent, but with a twist this time, a seahorse head. Again, in July of 1873, another captain claimed to have rammed his boat accidentally into the side of Champ, in which the passengers complained about the boat nearly capsizing. Here, the people described Champ as a serpent 25 to 35 feet long. At this point, Champ has caught the attention of the sideshow attraction scumbag P.T. Barnum, who was on a quest to collect rare creatures and objects to show off. He would hear about rumors of cryptids and try to provoke the locals to retrieve the creature, offering large sums of money. This guy was offering $50,000 for the hide of Champ. Stop here. P.T. Barnum will appear throughout many of these cryptid stories that I want to share, so get used to him. But also, I've got a major issue with this freak. If someone had delivered the hide of Champ, that means you not only found this endangered and rare species, but you also have killed it. This is inhumane, and I don't agree with this nonsense. Stop killing, start observing. There are more sightings that happen, but the big uptick in them was during the 1990s, and thanks to Kodak and their travel-size camera, people visiting the lake caught bizarre-looking things in their photos. As many as 600 people claimed to have seen Champ in those years, and many of them took photos. Here's the thing, Champ's not real. As I was conducting this research, I came to a sad conclusion that Champ is a made-up folklore that tourists can't help but want to eat up. Most of the photos are genuine in the sense that they weren't really altered, but what was in the photos were simply mistaken tree logs with branches or roots floating on the lake's surface. The elemental pressures around and below the lake affect the surface from time to time, and you'll see organic debris splashing in the waves. This is why it varies in length and almost capsized the boat. This captain, who rammed his boat into the side of Champ, actually just smashed his boat into the side of a tree trunk. Now, there are many reports of seeing movement from the creature, and here you look at what's indigenous to the waters. Garfish, long fish with a long snout, and if you mistook a glance, you would see a serpent-like thing. But these fish hardly ever grow to the size some people were reporting. But, of course, give the story a long enough time and it might come true. In 1999, a local New York fisherman caught a long-nosed gar that was over 52 inches in length. I'd chalk that up to being a freak accident. So another thing I brought up was the shape and description of Champ, and how he either has horns or has a horse-like head, but the rest of the body is described as serpentine. Yet, when we look at modern interpretation of Champ, he looks like a plesiosaur. At one point, around the time of P.T. Barnum, locals claim to have found fossil evidence of Champ and his kind. And here, we get the "it might be a lost dinosaur" thought. Of course, the fossils disappeared before anyone could verify them. But why does Champ still look like a dinosaur? My leading theory about this is that he is designed to look like his Scottish cousin, the Loch Ness Monster, Nessie. Why would they rip off such a character? Think about how famous Nessie is, and how everyone in the world knows where you can find her. It's a tourist attraction. Everything about Champ is to lure more tourists. Like the Loveland Frogman, the cities that live on the edge of the lake have adopted him as a mascot. They hold parades and name their local teams after him. Both the states of Vermont and New York have passed laws under Champ's name to protect the water. Also, when we go back through time, most of these sightings are in the summer, because what do people do in the summer? They go to bodies of water to cool down and play. Now, if we played with the more magical side of things with Champ, some interesting things are going on here. In the original Native American tales, they describe him as a large serpent with horns. This sounds very intimidating and scary for humans, when in fact, this myth was created to help explain the dangers of being in or around the lake. When the settlers come into play, some describe Champ as having a horse-like head. Some species of deep water fish have odd-shaped heads, but the odds of finding a deep water fish swimming in a shallow lake would be astronomical. Let's get more fantastical about it, and say, what about Ogopogo? Very similar aquatic cryptid that lives in a lake on the west side of the continent. Ogopogo is described as having a very similar shaped head as well. And if we take a left turn out of nowhere and accept the Fae as real, these are fairies, then we look at Northern European folklore, the Kelpie, water sprites that bear horse heads. I don't know the real start of this horse head on a sea creature begins, but you can find it all across the world. So yeah, I was disappointed about the truth with Champ. I always thought it was cool that America had his own Loch Ness Monster, but it turns out we just stole from the natives again, destroyed the original concept art, and spray painted a tacky AI picture. Now, if you disagree with me about Champ, it's okay. I understand. But what I wanted to find was a new creature. Instead, I got bamboozled, like all those people who think they caught Champ on their camera. Okay, I hope you enjoyed the video. Bye. Captain Crumb? With a name like that, he's definitely not sober.